This call is now being recorded.
Bhushan sir, can we
Good
begin?
evening, Principal Ma'am. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yes, I think I
Yes.
don't, madam, is Principal Madam, if you could hear us.
Principal ma'am, are we audible?
Yes, you people are audible. Just continue.
Okay.
Okay, madam.
Fine. Yeah.
So we'll start, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. A very good evening to one and all present here. My name is Susan, and I'm from the third year BLS LLB, and I'd be your host for the evening. On behalf of the entire DLLE team, I cordially invite each one of you to this event. That being said, I'd like to say that this event is a complete initiative of the DLLE team of our college. So, to give you a brief introduction on the DLLE and what it does, I'd like to call upon my classmate, Mr. Omkar Sani.
Thank you, Susan, for that wonderful introduction. Good evening to one and all present here. I'm Omkar Sani from third year, and as a part of DLLE itself, I would like to enlighten you about what it exactly is. The Department of Lifelong Learning and Extension, DLLE, as the name suggests, aims to impart knowledge beyond the four walls of our college and classrooms. The VS College, along with DLLE, has found this to be a great way to expand the education scope for the students as well as for others in the society. The same is done through such insightful webinars, competitions, and events, which has the end goal of giving back to the society what we learn in the class. It covers various aspects such as social, legal, economical, which we need to be educated upon. Mostly offline events such as street plays or festivals such as Udan, along with charity work, have been conducted by DLLE in 2019. However, due to COVID, hosting such events offline has become a challenge. But there is no challenge that we as students cannot overcome. With the help of Principal Ma'am, guidance of faculty, brilliant student managers, and of course, hardworking students, we have ensured that knowledge, being like a river, never stops. Last year, webinars on judicial approach and implementation of POXO Act, Police Role in Criminal Administration, along with elocution and PowerPoint competitions had taken place. While this year, poster making and competitions imparting education on elections had been conducted. As we move forward with the years, we hope to dispense as much as knowledge as we can. So without further ado, I request Susan to continue with the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Omkar. Now, before we move any further, I'd like you all to keep your cameras and audios off. And in case there's a doubt, please type it down in the chat box. Now, I'd like to invite our respected principal ma'am, Dr. Varsha Athavle, to speak a few words on the event.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Priya Madam. Uh, Good evening, all the faculties and students. Now, today we are going to hold one insight program, which is to be given by Priya Madam on education as an SDG goal, that is Sustainable Development Goal of which is declared by the United Nations. Now, this without the education, nothing can be achieved in the life of a student or life of a person. Education is one of the tools which is required, and it is considered as essential for development of the personality, and not only the development of the personality but the development in an economic, social, and just position in the society of that particular person. Because of this, our constitution, in our constitution, Article 21A is also included as a right to education, because as our nation is guiding towards the guiding the citizens towards their fulfillment of their goals, and the education is the important tool relating to for achievements of such goals. So I am not going to take much more time relating to importance of the education, but our esteemed speaker, Priya Madam, will guide us and give some insight relating to the how the education will be used and can be used for the sustainable development of the human being or total society in all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your words. Now, sustainable development, a topic that we may have learned in our 8th grade EVs. Why is it so important? Well, to elaborate on that, we have this entire session dedicated to it. But just to give an overview, we could call it as a balanced plan, a plan that meets our current needs, keeping in mind our future needs. Sustainable development goals are such goals designed by the countries of the world to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. Being the members of the DLLE, it becomes our very job to impart knowledge, especially when it comes to topics of such importance. And we are truly honored to have such eminent minds share their ideas and knowledge with us. So, to begin the event, I'd like to introduce and invite our chief guest for the evening, Ms. Priya Mukherjee, ma'am. Ma'am comes from a management background and has worked in the corporate field in many capacities. As an investment banker in the SBI capital markets and a corporate trainer for many organizations. Ma'am has also been an academician and has been associated with the JBIMS, the Australian School of Business, IE Business School, and many other schools. Currently, Ma'am is the director of the VES LARC and has been associated with it for over 11 years. As a director, Ma'am has been conducting various sessions for the students, faculty members, head of institutions, and also instituted and launched various sessions for the empowerment of students, honoring leadership within them, and improving the overall well-being of faculty members and students. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you, Principal Madam. Thank you to Bhushan Sir, Archana Madam, all the staff members of VES College of Law, and special thanks to all the student committee members for all the diligence with which, as they beautifully described, they have been working towards ensuring that education continues like a flowing river and doesn't stop. That was very poetically articulated. And I know for a fact we see with a lot of pride in Westlark the very good work being done. And today, Westlark as a sister institute, we are here to share with you some inputs on sustainability and education, also about what we call as PRME, which is the Principles of Responsible Management Education, because that is what gives a structure to the entire approach towards sustainability that our Vivekananda Education Society takes. So in the next 30 minutes approximately, let me just take your time and your attention to ask certain questions, share certain facts, and maybe leave you with certain suggestions. And of course, you all being intelligent young students will be taking the suggestions forward because that is eventually going to be a student-driven process. So at this point, I'll just start sharing my screen so that I can help you understand what is it that we have planned for you. And in fact, today's session is being done under the aegis of SDG 4, which is on quality education. Are the slides visible? Susan, could you just tell me if the slides are visible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, they are visible.
Thank you. So it's all about building awareness as to what this topic is and what the UN PRME program is, and then about seeing what can we do as students of VES College of Law and also the staff members who are here. What is it we can do without burdening ourselves, without overwhelming ourselves, but thinking and working in a manner where we are responsible citizens of society, of this country and of this planet. So the 5 things that we quickly discuss today are these. First, we talk about how VES is a signatory to this whole program of PRME. Second, we look at what is PRME and what are the SDGs. Third thing, which this is where it gets very important for us, how does this actually help us? This is just one slide for the students, but I hope it is still going to be relevant. Fourth, all this talk about sustainability, sometimes a thought crosses our mind that is this just hype? And sometimes cynicism tends to take over. So the fourth segment, we take a look at that part, that question. And lastly, we come to what I call in Hindi, karna kya hai? How do we utilize the opportunity? What is it we are actually supposed to do? I'll also be showing you a small video at the end and also help you understand the linkages between SDGs and what you all are already doing in terms of co-curricular and extracurricular work. Because every year since 2016, Westlark has had the privilege of compiling, editing, and then uploading the VES report on sustainability. We have taken inputs from the College of Law as well. We have found fantastic work that's happening. We would like you to become more aware of the good work that is happening within your college itself and also see as to whether you want to increase that or intensify that perhaps. So let's start with just a quick slide on how VES is a signatory to the UNPRME. It's very obvious and natural that any organization, any group of educational institutes, any entity which is forward thinking and has a long term perspective will want to work towards sustainability. Because as all of you are aware and you have studied in school, the very word sustainability means making sure you use your resources in a wise manner. So therefore, any place like ours, like VES, is going to be committed towards that. And we have formalized that commitment. We don't just do the action, we have also stated the very same thing in words. So since 2016, when we became a signatory, in 2017 was when we put up our first report. What we have chosen to do is put up an annual report at the PRME Global website. Their headquarters are in New York, by the way, about the various sustainability practices undertaken by the various VES higher education institutes. And who are the higher education institutes? We have the Arts, Science, Commerce College, Visit, VESM. This I'm just taken up in random order. College of Pharmacy, College of Law, College of Architecture. To some extent, the order which is presented here also shows the student strength of the respective 6 HEIs. We also have a 7th HEI, which is the VES Business School, but it will take a while for them to become a constituent college. Now, overall, Vivekananda Education Society has committed to the United Nations Principles of Responsible Management Education program, saying that as a signatory, we will do two things. A, we're going to do certain sustainability practices, and B, although once in 2 years we need to give a report, we will share the same once a year. Now that has been something voluntary that we have undertaken, that instead of once in 2 years kind of reporting and accountability, we have taken a tougher benchmark for ourselves, an annual reporting. But then the reason for doing that is when we voluntarily choose something that is a little harder to do, something that's a bit stiffer as a target, it actually pushes us towards doing our best. And any which way, there are certain good things that we're doing. So why not see if we can convert the good to great? So that has been the thought process. So what exactly is PRME and what are the SDGs? How do these get linked? The entire PRME program was created in 2007 under something called UNGC, United Nations Global Compact. Now, Global Compact is a UN entity which is actually business oriented. They try to regulate the manner in which business happens so that business does what is known as profits with principles. Now, in the process of doing it, around 2006-07, it was found that if we have to have a better planet, we need to reach our students. So a separate program called PRME was created, therefore, which is meant only for students of higher education institutes. Now, what do we mean by HEI? Many of you will be aware, if not all, HEI refers to an institute that awards a degree at the end of its program, not a diploma, not a short-term certificate, etc. So therefore, the target for PRME is all students who fall in the age group of 18 approximately to perhaps 22, 24 and above, because you could have MBA students, PhD students, working students gaining second degrees, who will be all the target audience for the PRME program. And there are 6 principles that they have given, which you can see on the slide as a second last point. And obviously the words are self-explanatory, so you could read them, but I'm going to emphasize 2 things here out of the 6 principles. One is research, the other is partnership. It was felt that students, for example, when they're, let's say, writing a paper or doing some research which is guided with the faculty, are they bringing in the aspect of sustainability along with whatever else they are doing their research on? So let's say you have a College of Law student who's trying to see whether there is a need for an overhaul of a certain regulatory mechanism, or maybe a certain law itself needs to be restructured for whatever purposes. Within that, are you considering aspects of sustainability? Now, somebody may say, really? I thought sustainability has a lot to do with the environment. Just wait for a few moments. We'll show you sustainability is much more than just the physical environment. It is also our social, civic, judicial systems, so on and so forth. So by now, I think one thing is clear. Although the acronym PRME has management embedded in it, it does not literally refer to B schools. It refers to all institutes of education, of higher learning, where you have students who are ready now to go out into the world as managers, as decision makers, and as policy makers. So therefore, research becomes a very important opportunity area for students, especially of VES, because in India in general, we need to develop a greater research orientation. The second word that I would emphasize is partnership. One of the things where we find in India, again, there is scope for improvement is the aspect of collaborating with people. We can be very good individuals and also very good as solo entities. Let's say a college doing well or a group of colleges doing well. When it comes to partnering, where you have 3-4 bodies coming together, 3-4 organizations, entities, educational institutes, maybe one industry entity, one corporate entity, one educational, one civic or NGO based organization, and doing something together, that is where we begin to flounder. Now, this is again something that I read and I found that this is statistically proven, and I found this very intriguing. Indians in general have research papers and collaborations which are more individually written rather than with 4 or 5 people. Having said that, the trend is changing. We are seeing more and more of collaborative efforts coming up even within our country, thankfully so and rightly so. So partnership is another opportunity area for us to think about as a future area of our work, especially for College of Law, because you have access to a very vast range of not just legal luminaries, not just existing judges and retired judges and famous lawyers, good lawyers, competent people, but also a separate ecosystem of people who can be a part of your partnership process. So, for example, when you all talk to NGOs and you all are getting somebody as a speaker from an NGO, what you're doing again is partnership related. Now, can you think of trying and converting maybe a simple talk, which is by one person, to something which is more like a symposium, maybe not a full-fledged seminar, but maybe a symposium or colloquium where you have more people representing more voices. And I'm sure a lot of it is already being done. But this is a small example that I'm sharing with you all to just reiterate the point that these two areas are places where not just in VS, but in India, there is opportunity for growth. Now, what are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals? If you take a look at this slide, it's a pictorial representation. And by the way, each of the goals has its own logo. The very first goal is about no poverty, which means, for example, let's say in your college, you decide to do a donation drive because you have maybe heard of people needing help during this pandemic. So you would like to distribute either food kits or maybe hand sanitizers and masks, etc. And you want to reach out to those who are underprivileged, those who are economically challenged, those who are on the fringes of society. What you're doing is actually addressing this first goal of no poverty. Similarly, in Westlark, a lot of our work revolves around SDG 3 because a lot of the work which we do, many of the workshops we have, our counseling work, our yogas and meditation focused work for staff members and also for students, the entire range of what we call as the Jigyasa, Swayam, Santulan workshops, all of them have to do with mental emotional wellness. So SDG 3 is a big focus area for us. Our pharmacy college in VES also focuses a lot on SDG 3 very naturally. For example, they have free cans for medical aid where local citizens, the local community people can come up and get themselves, let's say, checked or tested. That is SDG 3. Now, let's say you are doing something in the realm of gender sensitization, like we do in Westlock. That becomes SDG 5, gender equality. So this becomes an ongoing series of opportunities for all of us to see in what way the work which we are doing can be linked to SDGs, and we get inspired to have new areas of work perhaps based on which SDG we would like to cover. So our engineering college focuses a lot on SDG 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure. Let's say you have an engineering college student developing an app through which there is some improvement in the way in which the whole city functions, the traffic management functions. Now that will come under SDG 9 and also 11, which is about sustainable cities and communities. College of Architecture does a lot of work which is in SDG 11 area, also addresses 15 to some extent, 13 to some extent. Management college students look at 12, SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. And College of Law primarily looks at SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. If you think about, for example, the moot court, those of you who are in the third year would be remembering the first year's moot court that you might have attended or participated in. Even online, you have done moot courts. You know that the whole idea is to bring in this aspect into society. You want society to be strong. Parallelly, you also have SDG 11 that gets covered. And obviously, for all the SDGs, whenever you're partnering with people, whenever you're teaming up with outside people, that is SDG 17. So, in this way, if you look at this diagram, this picture, you can actually see how it is not difficult for us to embed sustainability driven thinking in even our curricular activities, let alone our co-curricular and extracurricular activities. So, for example, when you are first studying about maybe prevention of sexual harassment at the workplace, the POSH Act and the Vishaka guidelines which go with it, or let's say you're looking at the POXO Act, there you're looking at SDG 5. You are also looking at SDG 11 because you're trying to make things better for the place, and SDG 16. Predominantly, it is 5 and 16, followed in a secondary way by 11. So even the curricular learning that you have is going to get linked to SDGs if you just sit down and think and analyze. Now, at this point, the very logical question that comes up is, why should we do this linkage? How does it help us to know about 17 SDGs and PRME? So now, therefore, let us go to the third segment, which is about understanding why we should be doing this analysis and how it helps us to be aware. More important, as students, in what way can you spread the word to people and why should you be doing it? As a student of VES, these are the things that happen to you. For those of us who are very practical and pragmatic, and we believe that we need to talk about the good work we do, the first thing is about brand building. If you're a council member, there is a deeper utility for you. The work that you do becomes more structured and meaningful. And when you plan it that way and you link it to sustainability, you're actually laying a foundation for your juniors who will be in the coming years following in your footsteps, because they get to see how you structure work keeping sustainability in mind. Because after all this effort for SDGs is linked to long-term perspectives. So therefore, if you're a student committee member, a council member, this becomes even more relevant for you. At the time when you seek placements, or let's say you decide to have your own firm at some point of time, again, being aware of sustainability practices and not just knowing it in terms of lip service, but understanding its value and therefore being convinced about it, that's a huge differentiator for you in terms of your personal brand. The most important benefit is what I have mentioned right at the end as a fourth point. We need to do what is crucial, and each one of us needs to step up to our responsibility, which means we move from being in a zone of indifference to being in a zone where we get involved voluntarily. So at this point, I'm just going to let you read this slide a little bit more And in case you have questions, just keep it in your minds towards the end when we have 5 minutes for a quick Q&A. You can raise that in the chat box. But take a few moments, read the slide. All right. Now we come to the fourth part, that after having looked at aspects of PRMA and SDG, if some of us are a little more cynical and we wonder, is sustainability really important? Then what would the answer to that be? Just to help you get nudged in the right direction, I'm going to share with you a few facts which are taken, very few facts which are taken only from the realm of the physical environment. So I've taken only the physical environment as the area. I'm not looking at social, civic, judicial, and many other ways of looking at it. So we are sort of slicing and dicing the data only in terms of the planet and, let's say, the climate crisis. So take a look at some of these facts. I don't know if personally you were aghast when you read about the 5 trillion plastic particles. Now somebody may say, how do you know it's 5 trillion? Well, that's an estimation, of course. The scary part is all of this makes its way back to our bodies, irrespective of who you are. And if right now you're thinking, oh, haha, I'm a vegetarian, I don't eat fish, so therefore the plastic can't come back to me. Well, guess again, because even the best of our water filtration systems cannot remove the nanoparticles of plastic that have been found to completely invade our water bodies. I'm using the word invade deliberately because that's what we've actually done as human beings. Many of you would be aware of, say, the COP26 that happened last year, and then Greta Thunberg and global warming. And you might think maybe it's true, maybe it's hype. Once in a while, you might be getting angry about it and thinking, oh God, nobody cares. And then lapsing into the usual way in which we do things. If you are a Mumbaikar, and if you have a house here, or if you have a house in any city which is on the Indian coastline, you should be very scared. Your face would resemble this after a while, because global warming is not science fiction anymore. It is definitely a reality. And there have been some very sophisticated maps which actually show by how many meters our cities will get inundated and covered in water. Let's talk about our consumption practices. Yesterday happened to be our Republic Day, and many of us would be aware that there were sales which were there by Amazon and Flipkart and goodness knows which all other conglomerates, the large companies of the world. Are you aware of this fact that if everybody were to start consuming things more, where you buy things you don't need but buy them just because you can and you're sort of enticed to, we would need several more planets to fulfill the kind of production demands that would come up. This I have already mentioned. And the sixth fact is also something that should be scaring you. Now, at this point, when you look at these 6 facts, you might think, oh, this is not so relevant to India. Or ma'am said it's only about the coastal cities. The rest of us don't need to worry. If I hail from another part of the country, or I have my family members there, or I'll just go settle down in some other part of the country or the world. It's not going to be so easy. I'll give you another fact that I haven't mentioned on the slide. The Himalayan glaciers are supposed to be melting at a much faster rate than they're regenerating. Now that's bad news for all of us. The reason being, we have the largest riverine systems right from our Ganga and Yamuna. On the other side, you have the Indus and the tributaries. Indus, of course, goes right to Pakistan, but then we have the other tributaries within India and other states. All of them will initially have floods at the time of glacier melting and then have droughts. Now, what is going to be the impact? Out of approximately 1.2 to 1.3 billion population in India, roughly 400 million are, as of now, situated in what is called the rice bowl of the country. In other words, we're looking at Uttar Pradesh and several other states in the region where the waters of the rivers are responsible for prosperity and therefore a high density of population. Once this place turns arid, because the rivers run dry, because the glaciers have melted, because there has been global warming, all these 400 million people are going to be displaced. They will become climate refugees. Where are they going to go? The rest of the country. What is going to happen? Do we have the space or the infrastructure? Do we have our system set up to accommodate? The answer is not really. What happens to our GDP? What happens to our economy? What happens to our share market? Let alone these aspects, we could be looking at a future where there is civil anarchy, where there are water riots, where because of climate refugees, you actually have a situation where the law and order machinery of the country breaks down, God forbid. I hope in future, when I look back to this day and this evening of sharing, I will sound like a doomsday prophet who did not come true, whose words did not come true. Unfortunately, as of now, national and international experts are saying otherwise. So we all need to be very scared about this, and my generation may not live to see this, but yours definitely will, which is a sad truth. That's not the kind of legacy any generation wants to leave behind. But the point is, as we say in Hindi, jab jago tab savera. It is never too late to take the right steps towards having a more conscious way of living so that the planet is healthier and therefore we are healthier. Excuse me. I'm just sharing with you one slide that I picked up from a McKinsey report I found. Many of us will be aware that organizations and consultancies like McKinsey's from time to time, they put out extremely useful quantitative data by which we get to understand the way in which certain trends are happening and shaping up. So if I draw your attention to this, if you look at the kind of CO2 emission rise which is being forecast for 2025 and the contrast with the past, you get to see where the problem really lies. Today, thanks to this, we are talking of ice thaws in places like Siberia and Russia, and we're talking of methane gas getting released from there in large quantities. I won't go into the technical details, but suffice to say, apart from water usage and land use being pushed and strained, it is a CO2 emission, which is the real scary part. Incidentally, the next time you find yourself buying a garment that you don't need just because you like it or it's on sale or somebody's gifting it to you or you're gifting it to yourself, ask yourself what is the water footprint and carbon footprint. Now, every garment, let's say a cotton t-shirt will on an average require 200 to 250 liters of water. That is its water footprint for its entire production cycle. Now, somebody may say, so what? These are our necessities. If they are a necessity, that's fine. But at some point, we all know in economics, we would be aware, a need is different from a want. Now, again, that raises a question, should we not be fulfilling our wants? Of course we should. But then we need to ask ourselves, to the extent that I'm fulfilling the want and therefore there is more CO2 getting released, more water getting used, is my productivity as a person on this planet going up? So that in some way I'm able to recompensate for whatever loss has happened to the planet in terms of the assets that were used. And you'd say, wait a minute, aren't we paying a price for what we buy and therefore we are anyway taking care of the carbon and water footprint? The answer is no. Again, if you get into climate economics, there is an entire area of studies which is climate-based economics. You realize this is not so. Pricing does not indicate carbon and water footprints. Simple example, a bottle of cola. If you have ever enjoyed having a Pepsi or a Thumbs Up or a Coke or whatever, I don't know if you're aware, making 1 liter of cola requires several tens of liters of water. Now, does it mean that by drinking that 1 liter of cola, your happiness and therefore your productivity, not just happiness, mind you, your productivity as a person is increasing to the extent that you're depleting the planet of water? Does the pricing reflect that? No, the pricing does not reflect that. Take another example, diamonds. Now, diamonds, as you all know, are expensive. Are they expensive because it takes a lot of water in order to be able to take it out of the earth, or we are releasing a lot of CO2 in the process? No, that doesn't happen at all. And yet, why they're expensive? Perception, scarcity, brand management, so on and so forth. So behavioral economics and climate economics can lead us to some very startling answers. And why am I reiterating this point, particularly for College of Law students, is because you are trained to think in an analytical way. You're trained to ask questions. You're trained to see beyond what lies at the surface and go to the roots of what is the truth, which is why you need to become more mindful and also make other people become more mindful. Now, again, this is a domain which is related to one of our very special domains in Westlark, gender empowerment. I have put up 8 points on this slide. I would ask you to take a few moments just to read the 8 points, and I'm just going to dwell on one point. Let's take a few moments to just read. If by now you're feeling slightly depressed or unhappy or a little angry at the state of things, then good. That is one of the important objectives of sharing these facts with you. And what I'm sharing here is just the tip of the iceberg. And you know that. The reason for sharing is just to make us understand the fact that talk about sustainability is not hype. It is the living reality of the kind of society and world we live in. The gap between have and have nots, the gap between men and women in a lot of societies, the gap between those who are economically privileged and those who are not privileged for various reasons. All of these gaps are today coming back to haunt us because decisions made by large entities, by rich entities, are not going to serve the planet's best interests, which means when you look at the 7 billion people on the planet, we need to ask ourselves, in what way are we using our voice to make a difference so that things get better? So there's just one point that I'd like to mention when it comes to gender empowerment. I don't know if you're aware, as per one of the reports that I read in 2020, 2021, it is said that only 27% of Indian women work. Now, I want you to take a moment and think about that. Look around you, ask yourself, how many women do you know who don't work? And I'm not talking of those who are in the 60 or 65 plus age group. Do you really know women who don't work? And if you're thinking, okay, I know a lot of people who are homemakers, they don't do work which gets paid for, then again, we are getting into how the GDP is calculated. And similarly, when you look at women who also work for a living, let's say they're laborers on the road, or they are farmers in the field, or they're helping their spouses, they're helping their husbands work, a lot of them do not really come within the formal system. They're not counted as part of the formal system when it comes to work. And these numbers are scary because they've actually fallen. In 21st century India, the percentage of women who work has fallen. I don't know about you, but I feel ashamed. I feel ashamed on behalf of all urban educated people who are choosing to turn a blind eye to certain facts which should wake us up and get us moving in a certain direction. So on that slightly philosophical note, the final segment that we get into is Karna Kya Hai? What is it we should be doing? So we talk about how to utilize this opportunity of PRME and do something that's constructive. So as a student, what is it you can do? The first is figure out which SDGs are linked to your interest areas. Let's say I just now mentioned in Westlark, for us, SDG 3 and SDG 5 are very important. Now, that is the way in which we've structured our work. Maybe as a College of Law student, for you, your interest might lie in SDG 16 only, where you say that, okay, I'd like to do something for civic society and I want to overhaul or improve or change something in the system that's there. So figure out the SDGs that are important. Or maybe you say, wait a minute, I would also like to work in SDG 7 or SDG 9, which is for industry and innovation and infrastructure, because we need to change the way in which certain things happen. Find that out. Map whatever are your interest areas to the SDGs, or if you feel enthusiastic enough, those of you who have that desire in you, figure out new co-curricular and extracurricular activities you can do. So for example, you may already be having certain activities as part of the annual calendar. Start with those and see what is the SDG linkage and in which one can I work. Or you might want to come up with completely new ideas, and your professors are very enthusiastic and supportive. I'm sure if you take your idea to them and go to them and then to principal ma'am, you will get the go ahead to come up with new ideas. Raise awareness, very important. There is no point in having a lamp if you put a little cover on the lamp and close it. After some time, the flame will go out because it doesn't get oxygen and that light never really reaches people. You have to talk about the good work that you're doing, but in a proper manner. This is not for marketing hype or public relations. It is not in the sense of doing an exaggeration of a reality. It is simply to tell others that, look, SDGs are important. VES is a signatory. VES College of Law is a constituent college, so on and so forth. Whatever work you're doing, record and document it. I'll give you a simple example. When you click photographs, be it in the online mode or in the physical world when we have done our physical interactions and co-curricular activities, use apps which allow you to geotag. Now, when you're doing the geotagging, you get the date, the location, the address, the latitude, and the longitude. Now, when you're doing that, and let's say tomorrow you decide to present your data in some international forum, maybe you're presenting a paper, or maybe you're doing a small presentation, just a PPT set of slides you're showing to people, having geotagged photographs actually works as a right evidence. And as College of Law students, you know the importance of the word evidence. And very important, like I said earlier, please collaborate with other stakeholders. Partnerships are important. We don't have answers to all the questions, but there will be others who do. Never hesitate to ask and seek out. And similarly, don't hesitate to share what you know with others as well. Now, at this point, some of us might be thinking, we're already busy and tired and confused, and online learning has anyway been a drag. Our lives have become a mess right now. Can we still do something in this domain? The answer is yes. Like I said earlier, first check what are the activities that are already happening in the college and the socially relevant ones. Now, incidentally, all of them are socially relevant. You just have to be able to structure it in that manner. Link it to the SDGs and then include that particular SDGs logo and talk about that before you start the activity. Let's take an example. Let's say you have an inter-college event where teams of students from different law colleges of India are going to be participating. Now, straight away, that gets linked to SDG 4, which is that of quality education. But it may also get linked to other SDGs. For example, in a certain year where you choose maybe the rights of senior citizens as one of the themes of your work or competition, then SDG 16 can come in. As a subsidiary, SDG 11 can also come in. So talk about this. And when you're doing the competition, spend 5 minutes before the start. Once you do the introduction and all that, tell people about it. Raise that awareness, make them understand what you're trying to do and what VES is therefore trying to do. Now, you all are already doing a lot of activities very well. I've just taken some photographs. These are of the pre-pandemic times. So these are not the virtual activities. These are the in-person activities. All competitions become a forum for you to talk about PRME. Now, this happened to be the second picture that I got was of a High Court visit. Now, that is again SDG 4, which is quality education. Moot court competition, SDG 16, peaceful, peace, justice, and strong institutions. This is the free camp that you'll do, the legal aid camp that happens every year by the College of Law. I love this because, as someone who has been a bystander, I get to see the impact that you all are creating in society. This is again SDG 16, but it can get linked to other SDGs based on any specific theme that you all pick up. And even a simple thing like a presentation competition that you all have, a poster making competition that you have, gets linked to SDGs based on what is the theme that you take up. So this tells you understanding sustainability and linking it to our education process is not difficult at all. All it takes is some awareness, which we are trying to do today, and the intention. In Hindi, we say इच्छा होनी चाहिए और उसके लिए वो चेष्टा होनी चाहिए. The effort has to be there. The effort and the thought, the intention, that's enough for us to be able to link sustainability to education for our curricular, core curricular, and extracurricular activities. So on that note, I'll just take us to a picture of somebody. You may not know who this person is. I'm going to show you a video to help you see how sometimes Single people become change agents, and you don't have to wait till you're 35, 45, 55, you're rich, you're powerful before you start changing the world. You can do it here and now. There is no magic threshold or milestone to cross. So this is a person called Boyan Slat, who's from the Netherlands and who has started his own company called the Ocean Cleanup Company. He dropped out of his studies, by the way, because the work he started doing completely took over everything else, and he's been phenomenal. Today, he's quite well known all over the world. Let me just play the video for you.
It's really important that.
Is this audible? I'm sorry. Was the video?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
It's really important that as engineers and inventors that we always develop technologies of which the positive effects are larger than the negative side effects. By stacking those inventions on top of each other, eventually you get to a world that will be many times better than it is today. When I was 16 years old, I was scuba diving in Greece, expecting to see all these beautiful things. I was really disappointed because I saw more plastic bags than fish. And I just asked myself, why can't we clean this up? Everyone told me it would be impossible. But to me, massive problems are more fun to work on. Halfway between Hawaii and California is the largest accumulation of ocean plastic in the world. Every year, millions of tons of plastic enter the world's oceans. According to the UN, this is about $13 billion per year. Vessel damage to fishing, as well as pollution on beaches, which needs to be cleaned up. All these large things will crumble down into small pieces. They enter the food chain. That's a food chain that includes us humans. You're 5 days away from civilization. You just look around you and you see all this plastic floating around. The plastic doesn't really go away by itself. Some of this has been floating around for decades. I think you can either be sort of part of the problem or part of the solution. I'd rather be part of the solution. When people say something is impossible, the sheer absoluteness of that statement should be a motivation to investigate more. I think I've really been an inventor all my life. I wondered, well, why would you go after the plastic if the plastic could come to you? What I came up with is a fleet of floating barriers that roam around the ocean but move slower than the plastic, purely powered by the winds, the currents, and the waves. These automatically drift to those areas where most plastic is. The system acts like the plastic.
We see the plastic as a resource. We look beyond the problem and see the financial value.
We will be collecting a lot of plastic, which we can recycle, sell, and fund the operational expenditures of the cleanup. With a fleet of 50 of these systems, we should be able to clean up 50% of the garbage patch in just the next 5 years. What I really hope is that the ocean cleanup can become a symbol of how we use technology, working with nature to solve the big challenges of our time. 20, 25 years from now, I think we could really get to an ocean that is virtually clean again.
Okay, so on that note, thank you so much for your time and for your patience. And we conclude the sharing session. These are the contact details for Best Luck. Do let us know if you have any suggestions for us for future interactions. We'll be happy to work with you for this. And of course, when it comes to PRME and sustainability, please do take this forward. We are there. Westlark is always there to help. We work as a central sort of node, and our job is to try and guide you as best as we can. So thank you so much for your patience. I'm just going to come out of the slide share mode at this point. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Yes, ma'am. We have a couple of questions and many resolutions too. Next time I scroll through Myntra, I'm definitely going to think about sustainability.
Thank you, Susan. That's very honest of you to say so. Not just you. I think this applies to the vast majority of us.
Yeah. So the first question is by a student manager itself, Apeksha. Yeah. Just a minute. Not by Apeksha, by Siddhi. Okay, so the first question is, once things completely start again, what steps can we take to not worsen the situation or the thing?
Perfect. Very good question, Apeksha. And you've asked what I call a very wide spectrum question because this covers many things. What I would suggest is first do a little bit of reading on the SDGs. You can just Google it out and read, of course, or if you would like Veslak to give you more material, we'll be happy to do so. After you become a little aware of different aspects of it, ask yourself in which area you want to fine tune your focus. Now, some people are generalists, they like to do a little bit of everything. So, they'll do a little bit of planet related SDG work, they'll do something related to gender, maybe something related to poverty, something related to good health. Some others are very sure that they want to have a certain uni-focus direction. Both approaches are fine. There's nothing like a right or a wrong approach here. So, in order not to worsen the situation, the only single one point answer is become more aware. Become aware of what? Become aware of statistics. I'll give you another scary statistic. The more I read, the more these scare me. Do you know that, for example, watching Netflix for 9 hours is equivalent to burning 1 liter of petrol? That's the kind of impact. So all the people who've been binging on Netflix from the time the pandemic started, don't blame yourselves because many of us found ourselves in a very weird world and that became our coping mechanism. I'm not saying don't do it, but maybe you want to ration it out because now you know what is the linked cost to it. So this is what I'm saying. The more we read, the more it helps. Yes, I can see in the chat box, definitely, Manoj. What you have said in the beginning about knowledge and education, yes, we can use those words synonymously for our purposes here. And I also like the point you've put up about the Silicon Valley example. Yes, that's very true. Today, of course, Silicon Valley is a totally different thing. So we won't talk about the collaboration there. It's become a very hierarchical kind of society. Yes, Manish, definitely we can share more material with you. Just route this through the college to Veslak. So you can just put it up to Bhushan sir and then he'll be able to give us and we'll help you out with more material. Like I said, the existing extracurricular and co-curricular activities you all are doing, those itself have got great SDG linkages. I've attended some of the workshops in the past where in the physical world, when we used to have sessions, even in the online world, for example, there was something on POXO that was done. Now that clearly has to do with 2, 3 SDGs at least. There's a gender equality SDG that gets linked. There could be quality education getting linked in case there's a school level, institute level attempt being talked of. So many linkages can be found. Raise awareness, know the facts and raise awareness. The more facts we come to know, it becomes incumbent on us to also tell others about it. That is where sometimes I feel in India we need to do more. In the Western world, if you see, they're very articulate. Not for a moment am I saying we're not good enough. We are very intelligent, very ingenuous. We are very resilient. We can manage with very little resources and still find solutions. But we need to sometimes put ourselves forward and talk about the good work that's happening so that we build that culture. It's not to beat a drum. It is to build a culture where those who are following start off from where you already are and they take things to the next level and so on. Which means, let's say after 5 years, you come back to your college as maybe a distinguished speaker. You should be happy and proud to find your juniors doing way more in this area of sustainability linked work than what maybe you could do because you're the one starting it off. So many more work can happen from there. That's a good question. No, Manoj, there hasn't been any discussion on this aspect. This has been made as a fairly comprehensive set of guidelines. And what they have done is that's why the last SDG, which is partnership, they've sort of made that a bucket SDG, if I might use that term. Many things which don't fit into the other SDGs get put into that SDG 17. So personally, I avoid linking SDG 17 for our VES work because I find unless it is consciously being done with a view for partnerships, it's not right to do so. But that's a good question, Manoj. No, there hasn't been discussion. So you could actually think of that. If any of you are planning to intern with United Nations, different agencies, they have their agencies all over the world, all the different organizations of the UN. You have the ILO, you have the WHO, you have the ITC, International Trade Center in Geneva. There are so many of them. You could actually raise this as a point and as a suggestion. Great things always start with the simplest of ideas, the most elegant of ideas. So never think that, oh, I'm just a student. I hope none of you have that thought, because the work y'all are doing is superb. So I'm kind of hoping that you don't have that thought that, oh, I'm just a student, what can I do? You can do a lot, believe me. Okay, there's another question, I think. Oh, yes. You're talking of economics. Sarthak, your question is actually linked to behavioral economics as well as, I would say, climate economics. Because when you talk of inequality, I'll straight away suggest to you start reading up on something called the Gini index, also known as the Gini coefficient, GINI. I don't know if you all have economics as part of the subjects that you study. If you don't, please read up on this, because it tells you how societies have differences, very vast differences. So the higher the coefficient, the greater is the gap between the richest and the poorest. Unfortunately, India has a high score. There are many countries with high scores. There are some with low scores, like the Scandinavian countries. They have very low scores. So yes, you're right. In fact, the polarization, the word that you used very correctly, that is linked to inequality. Because the greater the inequality, the greater will be the chances that you need polarized narratives in society for people to be ruled and governed. I know what I'm saying sounds very provocative and loaded, but just think about it. A society where there's greater equality, greater income parity, and a higher human development index, HDI, will have lesser trouble with governance. So therefore, it is going to be easier to have sustainability taken forward there. So in a way, it's sad and ironical. The good countries who are anyway doing well on the HDI scale, their per capita is high, they don't have too much of poverty, they don't have slums, they have great infrastructure, they have good maternal health care, you don't have children dying due to malnourishment. They're also the ones who are working very well in sustainability. And the ones where there is inequality, say China and India, even USA for that matter, there you get to see lesser work happening than what should be happening, given the size and heft of these countries and the populations that are there. So how do you do it positively? The answer is simply by having increased awareness and talking about it. So you have actually answered your own question, Sarthak, with that word awareness that you put in, because as policy makers, going on repeatedly reiterating certain points does have an impact at some point of time when laws get changed, when systems get changed, the SOP, the standard operating procedure in companies that gets changed. That is how the change happens. So that is how you do it in terms of creating that positive impact. I love the word awareness that you've put up, Sarthak. Good for you. Susan, was there any other
Yeah.
direct question that
Yes, ma'am. We have
let's
a
take
few
that
more.
last question.
Yeah. This is asked by Khushvi. So, is it possible in any way to judicially enforce the SDGs?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question, Susan. I think there's a bit of
Yeah.
an internet issue.
So, is there any way we could judicially enforce the SDGs?
No, not as yet. In fact, that would be fabulous. Right now, that is completely voluntary. And you know how it starts. Change in society starts with something being voluntary, meaning a practice which, if you do it, it's good. If you don't do it, still okay. We're at that stage in India right now. In fact, in most of the world, that is also the stage. However, in the corporate world, you do have something called ESG coming in, where sustainability is being talked of. But is it getting enforced? The answer is no. India happens to be, incidentally, the only country where CSR, corporate social responsibility, is mandatory. You would be aware that 2% of the average profits of 3 years, the last 3 years for a company, is what the company has to give towards CSR. And nowadays, because of the pandemic spending is also being counted under CSR. Now, please note, India has taken the lead here. We do not have other countries who have made mandatory good work happen. So personally, I'm very optimistic. I think in India, we've got enough good brains with the right intelligence as well as the right heart who can actually enforce some level of SDG compliance. So is it being done as a law? The answer is no. Indirectly, is it happening? Yes. The best of companies, if you take the multinational companies, I don't want to name any companies here, but the best of companies have a lot of voluntary work that they're doing in this domain, and they talk about it. So they have taken on those aspects of triple bottom line, of ESG reporting, and it makes a difference to even their share market price. So it's the benefit is there for all to see. It's like a win-win proposition. So that's a good question. Very good question. Students, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the very interesting and very, I would say, thoughtful questions that came up in a short duration. And we really thank Principal Madam for giving us this opportunity to Westlark for sensitizing you all about this aspect of PRME and sustainability within VES. As you know, we start off as VES people, but as citizens of the planet, there is a much bigger role that we get to play. And that's a privilege we have because we are educated people. Those of us who don't have to worry about the food that we will eat in the next meal, the responsibility is there on us to do things that are for the betterment. Okay, thank you. I get to see that. Lovely. Good to see that. It's a small world, Manish. Good to see that. So we meet again. Thank you so much to all the staff members for your very sweet and enthusiastic support for today's program, for being here, for participating in this. And thanks to the entire College of Law family for working in this domain beautifully. Now, with this sensitization, I hope to be able to see more inputs coming in, and we're going to be very happy and privileged to help you in whatever way we can from Westlark's side for this particular area. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. So now that we've come to an end to the event, I'd like to call upon Ms. Diya Patil to propose the vote of thanks.
A very good evening to everyone. Now that today's informative webinar has come to an end, I, Diya Patil, the student of SYBLS, on behalf of the entire VES College of Law, would like to take great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks. First and foremost, I would like to express a deep sense of gratitude towards our guest speaker, Ms. Priya Mukherjee, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing with us the various important points about sustainable development goals and facts about environmental impact. Ma'am, thank you for making us understand what is PRME and explaining how VES is a signatory to UNPRME. Ma'am not only gave us quality insight on the 17 goals of SDGs, but also explained optimum utilization of the opportunities that are particularly important to aspiring law students. So, thank you, ma'am. Secondly, we are grateful to our very own principal, Dr. Varsha Athavale, ma'am, because of who could organize this webinar. Furthermore, a full thanks to our that is Ms. Bhushan Shinde sir and Ms. Archana Khanve, ma'am, for being a constant support for everything that we are today. I would like to thank my colleagues, Mr. Omkar Sane, Ms. Nishtha Savar, and Ms. Briti Magdani for their continuous support and help throughout the process, and also thank the team of students for organizing this webinar. And last but not the least, I would like to thank all the attendees who have attended this event. All of this wouldn't have been possible without you all. Before we end the webinar, I would like to point out that the feedback form for the webinar has been shared in the chat box, and the certificate for attending the webinar would be only given upon filling the feedback form. Thank you all once again. Also, I would request everyone to switch on their cameras for taking a virtual picture.
Thank you, Priya Madam, once again.
Thank you, Priya.
Thank you, Priya.
My pleasure, truly pleasure and privilege. And I'm so happy to be able to interact with you all. The divine willing, we'll get to meet in person as well. But for now, at least virtually, we're getting to share these inputs and learn from each other. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Saurabh, you're taking the picture? Saurabh?
Yes, sir, I'm taking.
Yeah.
Good to see everyone's faces on camera. And once again, thank you on behalf of the entire Westlark team. Anushka Punjabi, our executive manager, was here. You all are most welcome to reach out to us through Bhushan sir or directly to us. We'll be happy to help you in whatever way we can for PRME and other activities. Thank you so much. We take your leave today.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, Principal Madam. Thank you, Bhushan sir, and all the students.
Participants, yes, most important. Yes,
yes, the team, that is a very good program. Very nice.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
It is actually the area which she was going to cover, that was not that much clear relating to the students. Now she has explained relating to the SDG goals, which is also the rating on which the rating of the nation is given by the United Nations. Anyway, but very nice session. Thanks.
Thank you, madam.
Something different than the usual. So
Actually, and our college is covering all the SDGs with under various programs, and we were not aware that this program is covered under this SDG. That is the main thing. Another thing which is given by the student, that a question was put that whether it is judicially enforceable. Then all these things are it is not justiciable, it is not enforceable, and it is the directive principles of the state policy in our constitution. But it is the directive principles given by the United Nations, because that is the agreements and conventions entered into between the state, among the states. So therefore they cannot be enforceable. Yes, the goals are set that every nation should work towards that particular direction, but it cannot be enforceable. There is no such higher authority, no sovereign authority. That is the area of the public international law. Archana ma'am is teaching in DYLLB and 5th year BLS. So therefore, it is not enforceable because it is the directive principles, and as parallel to our constitutional directive principles, it cannot be enforceable. So that is the limitation relating to all these SDGs. And United Nations is putting the ranking of the each country on the basis of the development or the contribution made by that particular state towards those SDGs. And our what is the rank of our country? That is 182nd or something like that out of 194 countries. So this is the part and parcel of our statehood, which we can say. So where we stand, that is the question, and how we can change that particular standing. That is the question of for each student. Anyway, thank you for arranging this program.
thank you so much, ma'am. All because due to your encouragement.
No, it is the generally we try to formulate these programs on the basis that how far our students are going to get from that program. Yes, but that is a nice knowledge that the SDG is covered under each of our program. Then it is a knowledge, that is an information which is very much important to us. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, one and all.
Thank you, Apeksha, Briti, Omkar.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, should we exit?
Yes. So can we wait for a photograph? So, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
Like others can exit the attendees, only the organization committee can stay back.
Anything and everything for you, Apeksha.
Sir, should I stop the recording?
Yes, we can stop the recording.